On now, and as I said, questions at the end, so we'll thank everybody at the end for their presentations, but we'll move on to Matt, who's coming up next. And all of the next three presenters come from shareholders in the Centre for Climate Action joint venture, so they already deserve congratulations for that. So Matt is a global strategic programs sales manager for Silver Fern Farms, New Zealand's largest grass-fed beef and venison producer and global sustainable meat exporter. Matt has dual expertise in sustainable food production and marketing. Prior to this, he was North America sales manager for Silver Fern while living in New York. Has extensive experience connecting New Zealand's premium products to consumers in China, Germany, USA and New Zealand. Sits on the board of the Business Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, which is striving for an all-industry change towards more sustainable beef industry. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for that. So I think I'll start off by mentioning the fact that I'm usually sitting in an office somewhere around the world with about 5 people in it, so just to start the context off. But anywhere from Hamburg to New York to LA, Shanghai. So it's kind of one of those situations where we are sitting in front of the world as Silver Fern Farms and representing the farming community back here in New Zealand that is relying on us to tell that good story. So that's pretty much the crux of what I'm going to be talking about today, creating sustainable value in the market. And it worked. I'm going to fly through a couple of slides. I don't think I need to explain too much about who Silver Fern Farms are. Most of you will know us. The people that don't know Silver Fern Farms, we're relatively big. That's what these numbers tell you. But when we walk onto that world stage, we're not actually that big, especially when we go to the US and China and places like that. But we can use our relative size, so relatively small, we can use that to our advantage. Hold on to that. I could also talk quite a bit. I'm usually a walker, sorry, I'm going to step away from the mic too many times. I could also talk to this slide quite extensively. Obviously the sustainable action plans that Silver Fern Farms has and has had over the years. I think our first action plan was in 2017, so it was early for a meat company to have such a thing. And obviously what we're doing in 2023 and beyond. I could also talk about how the world's changing and it's driving our change. I am going to touch on that. But what I think you want to know more about what Silver Fern Farms is doing is surrounded by our purpose and the fact that we're both encouraging change by pulling that in-market signal back to our farmers. And where does that start? It starts at our purpose. So creating goodness from the farms the world needs. It's a great purpose. It's enabling our whole company to get in behind it. It's our North Star as our decisions are made within our company. So the part of this statement that this climate conference is concentrating on, I suppose, is the farms the world needs. And we've got those, more so than most other countries. We're ahead of the game in a lot of respects to on-farm practice. And that's due to the fact that we do have innovative farmers amongst us and industry players that are driving change. So, farm to fork, farm to table, paddock to plate, there's all sorts of iterations of this. What they all have in common is that they start at the farm. What Silver Fern Farms implemented about 10 years ago was a plate to pasture strategy. So that is starting with the consumer. So again, going back to the purpose, it's creating goodness. Who are we creating that goodness for? It's the consumer. So it's going to sound a little bit strange, but I'm going to suggest that we look at this cycle and take the processor out for a second, do myself out of a job, and lump the pasture and livestock together That is our farming environment. That's obviously hugely critical in all of this. It enables the story to be told. And then everyone always talks about the consumer. It's kind of front of mind for everyone. What most people, obviously the people sitting in this panel possibly not, but most people forget about the supermarket. It's the barrier, gatekeeper, that enables that premium and the connection through to that consumer. So hugely important. Supermarket food service. I'm just going to lump that into one for now as it's easier to talk about supermarkets. So without understanding these critical parts of the supply chain, we're going to do a lot of work in New Zealand, and inevitably we're going to lose that value. So not being able to connect with that consumer is going to just leave value on the table, so change is not going to happen as fast as we would have liked it to happen. So consumers have been on a fairly fast trajectory of change. They've started from sustenance, as in I want to feed myself and my family, to better for you or better for them. So they're looking at animal welfare and grazing practices, so grass-fed and the like. And they're moving quickly towards a better for the world. So obviously we've talked about a fair bit of it in this session this morning. So minimising soil disturbance, carbon footprint reduction, protect and regenerate soil, enhance natural resources, and nurture farming communities. This all adds up to that good for the world consumer. The issue is that we've been bombarded by multiple sectors, but recently alternative meat, and their narrative has a dual target. So decrease meat consumption, one, but also transfer them onto these alternative meat products that, I'm not going to throw too many stones, but very little understanding of their footprint is made. The consumers don't really understand what's going on there either. So we've got a narrative that's been taken by fake meat. It might have failed slightly recently, so consumption of fake meat's gone down considerably, but they'll be back, and cell-based meat will be back too, or they'll come onto the market, which means that we need to be telling our story better and doing better back on farm so that we can tell that story. So again, touching on that consumer again, this matrix explains the eco-friendly consumer. And so I was sitting with a high-end retailer about 3 weeks ago up in the US, and this was after months of samples, emails, broker conversations, phone conversations, supply chain discussions to enable the meeting, so to get a sustainably focused product listed. He stopped me on this slide and literally said, his real worry, or his retail market's real worry, is to connect with that millennial who's changing in front of their eyes, but they don't know how to keep up with them. So they're losing people out of the meat case because of the environmental problems they perceive and the story that's not being told about the good production methods that we can do. So the millennials are the next consumer group that retailers will be targeting. But as yet, the meat category buyers are unsure how they're going to connect and target them. These same meat buyers are also often old men and boomers or close to them. Getting these people to change is hard, very hard. So we need to be making that story compelling, and whole of supply chain story needs to be told. Now this is, I know, going to be relatively controversial, and Rod, your challenge to us is fair and taken on board before I get to this next slide. Obviously some of you would have seen this, the media that we've created around this. Before we jump into this video, which I've got coming up next, which will explain a lot better than I can, the ability to move along a journey to progress to that regen ag to that climate positive space needs to start somewhere. So the investigations that were needed to get this together has enabled us to create a pathway through to a more sustainable beef supply chain. Let's pray that it works.
At the edge of the world, there is a special place unlike anywhere else. Aotearoa, New Zealand, the land of the long white cloud, a land alive, isolated yet abundant, rich in biodiversity and natural wonder. We have a deep connection to this living, breathing land, to the natural environment around us. Caring for it is part of who we are. Care at every step. It's in our nature. At Silver Fern Farms, we are reimagining our approach to carbon emissions through whole-of-farm thinking. We start by calculating our own emissions, then those on-farm and in our supply chain. Then we work together with farmers to protect and renew native vegetation on-farm while reducing our emissions. Restoring and adding to native bush and tree plantings on the parts of farms that are traditionally overlooked. Turning unproductive land into something of real value. Capturing more carbon, increasing biodiversity, moving our farms into balance, taking responsibility for our own emissions with on-farm offsetting. Net carbon zero by nature. Creating a taste that is of this special place. Flavour enhanced by nature. Goodness that comes from care. Introducing New Zealand's first certified grass-fed net carbon zero beef. Care you can taste and trust. From the farms the world is wishing for. Certified by the USDA and New Zealand's internationally recognised gold standard in environmental and carbon certification. Silver Fern Farms. Carbon zero, 100% grass-fed beef.
Controversial after the last speaker. The current definitions of regen ag, climate positive, those kind of sustainability claims don't really have a black and white definition yet. USDA don't recognise or define regen ag, so we needed a black and white claim to make sure that the consumers weren't leaving that meat case and giving that meat buyer options with regards to sustainability and for that consumer to understand what they're buying. So again, net carbon zero, USDA certified, Toitū EnviroCare audited to an ISO standard. It's something that the technology that we use to enable it, satellite technology, AI learning with regards to vegetation on farm, these things can be used in the future to enable our emissions total to be calculated, and obviously partnering with those better farms that are doing better practices is what this is all about. Okay. But it doesn't stop there. So it's not good enough just to turn up to a retailer and expect a good product's going to be listed. Again, this is talking to the journey that we need to, and story, authentic story that we're needing to tell along that supply chain. We do a lot of work in market with regards to support of products that do get listed. It's not cheap, it's not easy, and it's not fast, but it's keeping and allowing consumers an option as opposed to just walking away from the meat case. Then you've got the retailer that knows they might have a consumer, but they're not too sure about whether or not it's going to sell. Now, don't worry about the numbers on the slide. It's more about incremental sales, which retailers love those words. If we can demonstrate that, we've got a better chance to being on shelf and then therefore pulling premium back. Because at the end of the day, all of these slides is about ensuring that high-end consumers in market that are sustainably focused can pull premiums back to our farms. So going back to that plate to pasture, I've split out the three areas: the farmer, And the farming environment, obviously already talked about how important that is. The consumer and connecting with those who are willing to pay a premium for sustainable products. And then the retailer, who is often overlooked, but is one that connects us, the both ends of the supply chain. So it's about finding those right retailers and creating those relationships. So our esteemed leader, Simon Limmer, has put a fairly apt quote in there. The part where to become the most trusted nature-positive food brand is fairly ambitious, but it is this trust that will enable the transition that our industry needs. Building that trust and partnering with the right retailers will be key to dragging premiums back to New Zealand from high-paying international consumers. Okay, I thought there was another one, but anyway. As I have stated, the process is not easy, it's not cheap, and it's not quick. I reiterate that. It takes investment now to reap rewards in the future, and we need to be rewarding the better farmers, not just lumping everyone into the same bucket. I think that's crucial. The ones that have moved first are showing the way. And it's been said before, Kay, I think, said it was the carrot is always better than the stick to activate real change. But that carrot enables the better farmers that then enables the stick. Because if the stick comes along and doesn't have something to attach to or an example of someone doing a good job, then that stick is not going to be effective. Cool, thanks.
Thanks very much, Matt. So we heard about Silverfern Farms' consumer focus and really understanding the needs of millennial consumers, their plate to pasture strategy, and that they have a very nice promotional video.